Hey guys, welcome to Small Talk. Today's episode is going to be a lot of fun. It's very near and dear to my heart. We're going to be speaking with Stacy Hogan. She is a special needs advocate, consultant, and trainer. She's president of the Autism Society of Florida. She's also an advocate for Family Network on Disabilities. She's got a whole lot sorry, she's got a lot of other titles. It's a long laundry list. She'll explain a little more. We first met her when I was 5 years old. She was at the IEP meeting, the first one for my sister, who is autistic, which is how we know her. My mom, when I was talking to my mom about like what I should do on my shows, she was like, I kind of want to do something with Chloe, like with the autism thing, and she's like, oh, you should talk to Stacy. So we're gonna talk to Stacy. Hi, Stacy.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you here. So, give us a little background on what you do, because you do a lot.
Yeah, sometimes I look at my list and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's a little overwhelming. Um, but I spend most of my days, my regular like day job is I'm an educational advocate for children who have developmental disabilities. So that could be autism, Down syndrome, spina bifida, cerebral palsy, and the like. So I'm blessed to work for a nonprofit agency. So we actually get to provide free advocacy services, which I love to do because I get to then advocate for families that basically wouldn't be able to afford an advocate. So that's my day job, and I also run a program for the DD Council, the Developmental Disabilities Council of Florida, that's called Partners in Policymaking. It's actually an international leadership and leadership training and advocacy training program for parents of children with disabilities and self-advocates, so adults who have a developmental disability. And I am, yes, the president of the Autism Society of Florida, which of course is near and dear to my heart. I have a son who's 25 years old who has autism, and it was his diagnosis that kind of brought me onto the pathway that I'm on.
Okay. Yeah, because my mom mentioned, like, when I was looking at schools and everything for colleges, she was like, Stacy has a son who is autistic, and he is going to school for the same thing you are. Like, I guess you. So I would say you could say that that's how it all started for you, was your son.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, I am one of those people that believes that everything happens for a reason. So
Right.
before I had my children, so I have two children, actually worked for Broward Schools, which is, for you
Okay.
guys who don't know, it's the sixth largest school system in the country.
Right.
And the first job that I had there was a temp job, and it was in the budget office. And I don't know anything about school budgets. I was very young at the time, but it was, a little part-time job that I was doing.
Right.
And so then I left there and I got a job with two different elementary schools where I was working. I was the what they call the confidential secretary to a school principal. And the confidential secretary is the one who sits with the principal and goes over the budget and really to look to see how schools are funded and, how to make sure that we meet the needs of the students in the school. And so then when I had my children, I was just going to be a stay-at-home mom. That's what I wanted to do. That's what we worked hard to be able to afford to do. And so my first son was fine. Everything was good. And then I had my second son who started to show some signs of something, and we didn't know what it was at about 14, 15 months old. And he's one of the children who had been developing fairly on schedule, and then gradually, one word at a time that he had spoken, which was about 12 words, which is typical for a 1 year old, that just fell away. And so each word just kind of disappeared, behavior surfaced. And I am a parent who is actually part of a very common story where I went to my pediatrician, said there's something going on. He said, no, 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 he's fine. Look at on the growth chart. He's right where he's supposed to be. So I continued to listen to that until a friend of mine who was a school principal said, I think you need to go get another opinion. And it didn't take
Oh.
5 minutes. Yeah,
So
it took about 5 minutes to get.
you guys found out more about him when he got older, like when he was in school.
No, no, no. He was
No.
2.5. But it
Oh,
was
okay.
it was just I kept going to my pediatrician saying something is going on. And he kept telling me no. which is, again, a very common story,
Yeah.
very sadly, because early intervention is so important. So, for any of your listeners out there who may have a concern or just a question about what's going on with their kids, sometimes that's where advocacy begins. It begins at 2 years old when you're thinking, something's up. It might not be, anything significant, but just something is different.
Yeah,
I
I was gonna
encourage
say
everybody to go out.
your story sounds very similar to my parents with Chloe because they had me.
Yes.
They went through
Mhm.
their own things with me. I was this big, I was tiny, I wouldn't eat. But with Chloe, it was a whole different story. I think they said at like one, like when she was supposed to start walking and crawling, she just didn't. She didn't make any sounds.
Yeah.
Like she didn't even
Right.
babble like a normal
Right.
1 year old or baby
Right.
would. So she took her to the
Mhm.
doctor, and the pediatrician was like, "Yeah, there's something."
Oh, well, you guys were fairly fortunate then because we kept getting the,
Actually, I'm gonna
no.
lie. I actually don't. I don't. I think I'm mixing my stories. I don't know if the doctor said something that there is up, but my mom always described her as like a puzzle piece. So,
Yeah.
like she
Yeah.
like 'cause she didn't do anything.
Right. Well, it's funny because I know that a lot of people, give the puzzle piece symbol as for people with autism, but actually the puzzle is on us. The puzzle is for us to try to figure out what's going on, with this child. They're not developing the way that we expect them to. And I
Right.
think as a society, not just with autism, but just people, humans in general, we don't all fit in this little box.
Yeah.
Um, and some of us have different shaped boxes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But we have to figure out, okay, so if they're operating in a different shape, then what do we have to do? What type of interventions do we have to do? What kind of supports do we have to give that person so that they can not be shapen back into our shape that we want them, but rather to become the human being that is the right kind of human being for them to be. And so it's up to the rest of us to kind of give them that support. So it's sadly very common that our pediatrician still today, and he's 25 years old, so that was a long time ago. And my story, I still hear almost every day that it's the same thing. And so my advocacy began then. It began when my friend said, you can't continue to accept that. You need to go get another opinion. And I had to advocate for that because my pediatrician was like, oh, no, you're worried for nothing. What are you worried about? And I had to say, no, I need to go see somebody else. So either you recommend someone or I will go find someone on my own. And so that was my first thing, my first little episode of advocating for my son. And of course, we did get a diagnosis then, and we were fortunate because we had good early intervention, so we were able to pursue that. But basically, I was sitting in a committee meeting one day. He was probably 4 or 5, and this woman came to me afterwards and said, "Have you ever thought about being an advocate?" And I go, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm a mom. I just want to stay home with my children. I'm going to raise my children. That's my job. That's what I'm going to be doing." And she goes, "Oh, this would be just a couple hours a week." And I thought, okay, I could do this. I could do this a couple hours a week. Well, anybody who tells you something's going to be a couple hours a week,
It's
it's
not.
like the hidden, right?
It
The
always
hidden
turns
meaning
into
is
more.
under the, that's right. It's like hidden somewhere. So it was probably about 5 to 10 hours a week for about 2 weeks. And then it just quickly grew because the need is so significant in our community. Parents don't
Yeah.
know what they need to know. They don't understand their rights. And so I started with that agency like 22-ish years ago, and I've been there ever since. And, it's certainly a blessing that I have. And the other things that I've been able to do, really, they're just an offshoot of that. I sit on many committees, and there are certain topics like through the Autism Society, we're very heavy into drowning prevention. So right now, that is
Well,
something
I
that
I didn't
just
I get that. What was that?
drowning prevention.
Oh.
Yeah, because children with autism drown at a rate 160 times greater than typically developing children.
Yeah,
So it's a
because
huge
they
issue.
struggle to learn to swim, right?
Well, not only that, but we actually made a video called "Drawn to Water." They're just drawn to it.
Yeah.
It glistens in the sun, the way it feels on your skin, the way it splashes. I mean, it behaves like nothing else in our universe. I mean, it's just
That's
different. Water's
that's
just different.
interesting. I didn't realize that the whole drowning thing was such a big
Oh,
deal. Like I
yeah.
look at Chloe and I was like, "Oh, she knows how to swim." And then I like
That's awesome.
we went to a whole school where it varied between kids like me who just had like basic learning disabilities versus kids like her, and then more where it was like they had more going on for them. And
Yeah.
so like I look at them and I'm like, well, almost all of them knew how to swim. So the fact that the whole drowning thing is a big issue, I had no idea. That actually kind of blows my
Yeah.
mind a little bit.
Yeah, and I've been working with a lot of swimming instructors around the state of Florida, and they've been very encouraged by our message because even they didn't realize how significant or the lack of proper swimming lessons are
Right.
for children with autism. Because you know what, our kids sometimes can't be in a pool of 200 kids at a YMCA, swimming program.
Right.
It's too loud. It's just too much going on. It's very overstimulating, and there's meltdowns. I mean, it can be very traumatizing, actually.
Chloe
So we're
used
trying to
to
educate them.
Right. Chloe used to never like to put her head underwater. And then I want to say when she started to get into like her teen years, she decided to put goggles on. We were in our grandma's pool because we go there every summer. And we finally got her to, I think one day she just started doing it. She has this thing where she'll just start doing things and it
Yep.
surprises you. And I like,
Hmm.
we all smile at it. It's just, it's funny. It's interesting. But
I know you're like,
she swims
yes.
like a normal person now. Well, she
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
go. So like you or I would normally dive underwater. She doesn't dive. She just like she's like scuba diving almost. Like she sits on the surface, but she sticks her head.
Hmm.
She kind of looks like a log
Hmm.
in a way. But I mean, that's going underwater to her. Like she'll never
Oh
dive
yeah.
under. She'll jump in the
Yeah. Well,
pool
that's okay.
and yeah,
Yeah, basically what we're looking for is just if a kid falls into the water or walks into the water even, because like, again, if they're interested in the water and they walk
right.
into it, we want them to be able to stay alive and get
So,
out.
do lifeguards
That's
have to go through? I mean, obviously, they have to go through lengths of training, but is there something more specific geared towards like people with disabilities and autism and like what they can look for in the water or around a pool?
Well, that's part of, we're working in combination with the Red Cross. So we actually provide a lot of training to water safety instructors because the Red Cross certification, which many water instructors have,
Right.
we don't believe that there's enough. There's enough, not just for autism, but for special needs in
In
general. We don't
general.
think that there's enough, right? We don't think there's enough. So that's something that we're working on. And the Red Cross is great to work with.
That's
So
awesome.
we've had a really nice relationship with them. But yeah, I mean, the state of Florida has the highest children's drowning rate in the United States. And
That's crazy.
so, and there are like these committees that I'm on. We look at the hot spots. So the hot spots right now this year are Tampa and the Hillsborough area, and of course Southeast Florida. So the Fort Lauderdale, Miami-Dade. We have canals, lakes,
We've
the
got water everywhere.
ocean, pools. We do. I mean, and it's funny because a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, I don't have a pool," but I have known many children with autism to go into the neighbor's pool because water's water.
Right.
It
When they
doesn't
see it,
matter
they're
if it's
attracted to it. Or when they've got their
it,
mind
it
on it,
really.
they're not going to let go
That's
of it.
right. Well, and they're not thinking that the neighbor might not like me in their pool.
Right.
It doesn't. It just doesn't really occur to them. It's cool. It's neat. It's a pool thing in the other neighbor's yard. I can see it through the fence, so I'm going to go check it out.
Right.
And so we need them to be able to stay alive if they go in the water.
So I want to shift gears a little. So with this whole COVID thing, I'm sure many families are having trouble explaining the whole like why we had to shut down, why we had to stay home. Chloe is fascinated with China, which is where, of course, it originated from. So she was really mad at China. I came home one day and all the China stuff in our room was in the hallway. And I said, Chloe, why did you take it all down? She goes, I'm mad at China. So, do you have any sort of advice to help, like me, explain to her what we're living through?
Well, one of the things that is not just good for this, but just in general when it
Right.
comes to teaching kids with autism, particularly about changes, because they don't tend to do well with change. And
No.
this is This is massive. This isn't just change for them. This is change for the world. This is everybody.
Right, and I
And
get her
so,
frustration. Like I struggled to adapt at the very beginning of it. Like I
right.
had plans like going on the next month that I had to change, and it was upsetting.
Yeah,
But
right.
she was just every day upset or mad.
Right. Well, I think that if we want to look at why that that significant challenge is there, we can look at a couple factors. For one, when we are all anybody, any human is at our most anxious is when we cannot predict what's coming. Um, if you had a family member get in a car accident and you're sitting in the waiting room at the hospital and nobody's talking to you, they're not telling you what's going on in the back, chances are you're going to be rocking,
Right.
you're going to be pacing, you're not going to be able to communicate with other people because in your head, you're just so anxious because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's coming. And for a lot of people with autism, that's their life daily. And so there's some really interesting research that's out right now that's happening where they're looking at the minds of people with autism to look to see how much of a significant deficit is that part of the brain that helps us make those predictions. Because, like, when we even go grocery shopping, we're kind of predicting the kind of experience we're going to have.
Right.
You know, we know we're going to have to wait outside now. We're going to have to use our mask. We're going to have to social distance. We're going to have to follow the arrows on the floor. And if you can't predict what to expect, how stressful every moment must be for you. So here we have these individuals that are already stressed out because they can't make these predictions, or it might not be that they can't do it, but it's definitely a weakened area for them. So that's that. Then we also know that data will tell us there's something called the Vineland Adaptability Scale, and they give it a lot of times to children in school to see how good you are at being able to adapt to changes in routine. And most kids and adults with autism don't do so hot on that. And again, it's being able to adapt to changes in your routine. So now we have COVID, and the family members were anxious because we don't really know what's happening either. And I think a lot of parents, because I'm guilty, I think that we make false assumptions that our kids like maybe don't pay attention to us or they're not in tune with us. Nobody should ever make that assumption about a child or adult with autism because my belief is that they are even more in tune with us than your run-of-the-mill average kid.
Right.
And if you're walking around like a ball of knots because you're afraid of something, your kid may not come over to you and go, "Mom, what are you nervous about?" But that doesn't mean that they're not thinking that and maybe even perseverating on it. Meaning, it's going round and round in their mind. They're trying to get their minds off of it, but they just can't. And then they end up not being able to function. So for these kids, one of the best things that we could do is create what's called a social story. And a social story should be written in the first person. So my name is Stacy. I live in Cooper City, Florida. And I know that there are going to be some changes right now because there's whatever. And you got to kind of guide it according to the level of
Right.
understanding of the child because you're not going to write the same story for a 3-year-old as you are a 16-year-old.
Right.
That's regardless of the 16-year-old's cognitive ability because I don't like IQ tests either because I
I
think
don't
that they
either.
lowball. Yeah, they lowball a person. I mean, just think about IQ tests. It's comparing everybody that age to everybody that age. And how fair is that? That doesn't make sense
It's
to me.
not very
Anyway,
fair because like my IQ would be obviously different than like uh, my friend here. She's like maybe a year older than me, but like obviously we're at different levels. So
right, exactly. And so why would that not be the same for somebody on the autism spectrum? But anyway, so a lot of times we get these, depressed IQ scores just because the person isn't geared to take that kind of test. But then the problem is that then we all make assumptions. Oh, they can't do it. They can't perform. They don't understand. And that's like a big misnomer. So we should never do that. We should always have high expectations for our kids. And then if we need to provide them the support to get them to the next level that they need to get to, then we do that. But social stories are really good because it guides the person through whatever the challenge is, and explains to them to the best that we can. And I mean, if anybody's looking for a social story on COVID in particular, on the Autism Society's website and our Facebook page, we have one. They can easily download it, and then, just change the name. Of course, you want your child's name in there, or your, sometimes, for adults as well. There's also like a first then. So first we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. And sometimes parents need to have those kind of supports, like even when they're going to go to the grocery store. So first we're going to go to, XYZ grocery store, and the then should be something that the child is going to like to do, so that they know, okay, so there is an end in sight. We're not going to spend the day at the grocery store, which I really don't want to go to. And, a lot of our people are really challenged with the masks. The masks, there's, right now. So imagine if I had a lot of sensory challenges where I didn't like the hot breath on my face. I didn't like something strapped around my ears. I felt confined. I mean, I know people who have claustrophobia who cannot wear it.
Right.
They literally feel like they're going to die. I mean, that's the intense anxiety that they feel. So then we have that. But just making things as predictable. That's what the key is, making things as predictable as you can, but understanding that we can't predict everything. And then again, like I said, parents have got to, fake it till you make it. You have to fake it if you need to, that you're not stressed. And if you need to go in the other room and close the door and scream into a pillow, then you need to go do that. But you don't want to freak your kids out. So you got to try to remain as calm and upbeat as you can. And then, like my son has done, he's an adult, but he's done lots of Zoom sessions with friends that he has. He's part of a couple different social groups. So social skills groups are really great. And the people who lead some of those groups have done a really good job in hooking up with, on Zoom and those type of platforms, so that people can at least, see each other, right. Talk to each other. So that's really, making connections with others is really, really important.
Yeah, she's had this issue where, well, it's not even really an issue, but when she is in school, if there's confrontation, like she's just kind of hated school, just like she doesn't hate school, but like there's confrontation that may not involve her. Like there could be two people over here having an issue or not understanding something that's just causing like a distraction in the class. And it doesn't involve her, but it's a big issue for her. Like she gets upset, but she's gravitated towards one girl in school that she's FaceTiming a lot. So that's been good for her. But like she was so ready for school to end because of that. And
yeah. Well, I'll plug. There's a social skills curriculum that I just happen to love, and actually, I interviewed the creator of it a couple weeks ago. Social thinking, and all the schools have it, all the public schools anyway. And social thinking helps those type of kids realize that really that's none of my business. That's none of my concern, and it breaks down social situations into like bite-sized pieces, to where maybe even like looking at that situations with those two girls like arguing or whatever, and really being able to kind of figure out how big of an issue is it for you that's happening over there. Is it a big issue? Is it a little issue? Does it affect you? Does it not affect you?
Yeah.
And really being able to look at ourselves to see why we do decisions that we make. Like when I go at a school, I do not walk in with flip-flops and a tank top on. I wear a dress, I have makeup on, I look decent, because I realize that I'm going to be judged, because we're all judgy people. So they're going to basically look at me and think, oh, look at her on her flip-flops. She's not taking this very seriously.
Right.
But I know that skill. So a lot of these people on the spectrum, we have to teach them that their behavior is, we all get influenced by the other person's perspective on what we do, how we behave, and what we say. And for the person who doesn't have that, so maybe Chloe gets really upset, and maybe she even yells at them like, "You girls are fighting, stop fighting," or something like that, to where something like the social thinking curriculum would be able to help her realize that That's really not a big issue. It's not for me to worry about. It's not on me. I can't direct it. It's just, it kind of helps retrain the brain into
Right.
social skills situations.
What did you call it? Social thinking?
It's called social thinking.
Okay.
It was created by and that's just she has a whole crew now. When I first met her years ago, she was a speech therapist who had this new idea, and it's a fabulous curriculum. And it's
We'll
and
have
it's
to.
mostly, I think, good because it doesn't just you don't just sit down as a speech pathologist and work with a kid on their language skills. It's very thoughtful in why we behave the way that we do, and some of our behaviors, like the big catchphrases in it is. Instead of calling a behavior inappropriate, it's expected or unexpected. So the question for her might be, so this girl's behavior, was that expected or unexpected? And they would teach her, that it's unexpected. And because it's unexpected, that's why her anxiety goes up,
Right.
because I didn't predict that was going to happen, because that was an unexpected behavior by those two girls. And now I'm upset when I really don't need to be upset. Because what will end up happening, and this is it happens quite often for people who have autism, particularly, older teenagers and even adults, is that there's something else going on with other people and it gets them upset. So they get upset. But then in the end, what ends up, the other two girls are looking at her like, what are you doing? And so it's no longer an issue that should have stayed over there. Now she's in it. And now
Right.
that's going to negatively impact her social acceptance within her people, the girls at school, because she kind of lost it because of their
And
behavior.
I'm a bit guilty in this part because this happens at home too. I might be fighting with my brother and she'll put her 2 cents in, and it's like, you don't need to put your 2 cents in. So I will definitely relay this message to mom because I think this is something that definitely could help her because we've been trying to figure out, like, does she need a psychologist? Like, just something, because she's just so angry. And even if, like, if it doesn't involve her, she'll get mad at it. If my parents are fighting about something, arguing about something, she'll get involved. And it's like, she doesn't need to get involved. And
Yeah.
it's like, she has all this anger. So
Yeah.
maybe this would
There's
help.
something called, well, and also zones of regulation is really good, because the zones of regulation, and again, it has to be taught, but it's actually a visual representation of the zone if we're getting upset or anxious or whatever about whatever it might be. And it's color coded and it helps you, like, the person who's helping you would say, okay, where do you want to be on the chart? And then, help them talk through where they want to be. Okay, so what are the things that we need to do in order to get there? So it might be breathing, it might be walking away, it might doing some type of sensory activity. If you're somebody who needs activity, but helping them identify what it is that makes you feel better internally, so that then you can work through whatever this challenge is that you're having. So yeah, it's
Well,
it's really
thanks.
great curriculum
I
as well.
we're gonna check that out because it sounds like it could help her a lot.
Hmm.
Well, thank you, Stacy, for joining us, enlightening us a little bit. This was a lot of helpful information, not just for me, but hopefully someone else will find this helpful too.
Yeah,
Um,
no, I mean, there's lots of great services out there.
if people want to contact you, how can you be reached for advocacy, for help?
Well, so if you basically just, I mean, I have a website for myself, so it's just stacyhoagland.com. So that's really easy.
Yeah.
But also, I encourage any of those families out there, particularly who have children with autism, just go to autismfl.org. I have a fabulous vice president who does a wonderful job with our website, and she has a resource page on there. Social stories on COVID are on there, and just lots of COVID supports, schedules, and first thens and strategies. And so that we really try to do a lot. And then the other day, actually, we did a Zoom session with a school psychologist on caregiver burnout. So any of you guys out there burned out, we want you to feel connected. We want you to know that there are other people out there that are going through the same challenges that you are. So if you haven't checked that out, we also have a YouTube channel. You could go just on YouTube, Autism Society of Florida. We have a ton of videos on there, and we hope that those are helpful as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
It was a blast. Well, that's our show. Tune in next week for a special randomness. I don't know what it'll be yet, but we'll find out on Monday. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to tune in next time for a new word of the week, along with a new and exciting randomness. Till then, stay small.